Just to recap a little bit, last lecture on Monday, I introduced this interaction design process, so the discover, design, evaluate cycle. And then I talked about how that in Aga's class, she's going to talk mostly about the discover and evaluate piece. And here we're going to talk mostly about the design piece and building prototype interfaces. But I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about the design process itself, and then we'll talk more about the specifics of the prototyping piece. But in order to introduce that, I want to show you a short video from the website lynda.com. Lynda's a website where they have online classes, and there's a very short video where one of their teachers talks about the whole design process. So let me just show you that to start off with. And is it? I've lost it. Okay, I'll grab it from the other thing here. This one here.
It goes without saying that every process is different. That's certainly to be expected for the different design processes across various agencies and individuals. However, there are some fundamental parts of the design process that should be a part of every project's development, regardless of scale, and prototyping can play a critical role in this process. Before we get into the details of creating and testing prototypes, I want to give you a brief overview of a typical design process that involves prototyping. If your process doesn't look like this, it doesn't mean that it's wrong or that I'm advocating you switch. I would encourage you, however, to think about your current process, where your problem areas typically are, and then consider whether modifying parts of it makes sense, especially if prototyping isn't a part of your normal workflow. Most design processes start with brainstorming. For me, it's sketching. I still do almost all of my brainstorming with a pen and paper. I set a time limit for my team or myself, and I just sketch and take notes as much as I can within this time frame. Other brainstorming sessions may include collaborative planning, word storms, or working with style or element tiles. Regardless of the method you use, the goal is to generate as many ideas as you can, whether they're good or bad, within a certain time frame. After that, we have a brief session where we evaluate and refine those ideas. Time limits are important here as well because it's so easy to go off on unrelated tangents or get caught up in specific details. Ideas should be discussed on the basis of their merits, and good ideas are kept and adapted, and bad ideas are thrown away. Next, we generally take our good ideas and begin the planning process for the project. This could include some basic documentation based on the ideas we've generated, or a simple outline or wireframe that further refines the concept. Again, details here don't really matter too much, just that a general focus begins to take place. After that, we experiment with the ideas that survived by prototyping. That means that we might have one prototype that explores multiple ideas working in tandem, or we actually might have competing prototypes that approach the project with different ideas or executions. Either way, what's important here is to begin actually working with the ideas in a real and tangible way. Now this leads us to testing and evaluating our prototypes. As we begin to use them, we can instantly see which ideas were successful and which just didn't translate. We can also easily identify aspects of the project that will require careful thought and planning, or those that just work as intended. That allows us to refine the ideas and designs by further brainstorming and prototyping. If this sounds cyclical, it is. I believe strongly in creating multiple iterations during the design process and generating prototypes that progress as the design is refined. I feel this workflow leads to greater user experiences than those that try to plan everything at the very beginning of the project. In fact, it's not unusual for the prototyping process to start off with a simple paper prototype and then evolve to a higher fidelity HTML prototypes as ideas are refined. For me, that's important. Prototypes allow us to work through design issues by trying ideas, testing them, and refining them. If they aren't an early part of the design process, you lose the ability to innovate and experiment. This type of approach isn't right for everyone or every project, but it's worth considering if you're not currently working this way.
A membership to lynda.com unlocks this.
Great. So in this video, he went through that cycle, and he talked about the importance or the role of prototyping in the cycle there. And he made a couple of other points. One was that it's really important to try and do some prototyping really at the beginning, and also that it's a cyclical process as well. So you can build something, sketch something out, get some feedback or testing, and then go around again and again and again. In some cases, the design process is designed kind of like a three-phase model, where the first phase is trying to understand the user's needs. The second phase is creation, or sometimes called ideation, where you try and create lots of alternatives. And the third phase is delivery, or prototyping and testing. So Arga's, in her course, is very much going to talk about the understanding part. In this course, we're going to talk much more about the delivery part as well. So you can see the creation and the delivery part. This is kind of like two funnels. The funnel going out means you're supposed to be generating as many ideas as you can, and then the funnel going in is supposed to be refining those ideas down to the final product that you have. So you have this notion of elaboration and reduction. So elaboration is really around opportunity seeking and trying to generate solutions, and then reduction is about decision making and trying to decide which solutions are the ones that you're going to progress with. And these often happen in a cyclical process, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. So for elaboration, you want to be able to produce very, very quick ideas, and be able to communicate them clearly to other people. For reduction, you want to be able to produce ideas that, that you have some ability to help you make decisions. So if you're going through this process, what type of things do you think you would be doing during the elaboration process in terms of generating ideas for products or solutions? Does anybody have any ideas?
Brainstorming.
Yep, definitely lots of brainstorming. Yep. And what else do you think you'd be trying to do during that process? Yep, early prototyping. And how about through the reduction process? What would you try and do during this part of the process? Sorry? Refining? Yep. So how would you do that? So this is more about user testing, and this is more about, yeah, exactly. So you can have a couple of different approaches. So during the elaboration process, a lot of it is around kind of sketching or storytelling. So you want to be able to use things that provide the opportunity for very quick creation or exploration, things that are very quick and conceptual. You know, if you have an idea, but then it's going to take you 2 weeks to explain the idea or make a prototype that talks about the idea, then that's not happening during the elaboration process. You have to have ideas that you can express in just a few minutes. Whereas in the reduction process, as was said, it's more about prototyping or testing, so you have to have something that is functional, that helps with decision making, more about idea presentation as well. And so again, Arga's going to talk more about the sketching, storytelling side of things, and I'm going to talk more about the reduction and prototyping side of things. You also have to think about this kind of design funnel, so where you produce a number of initial concepts, and then you do some initial testing or prototyping, and then you produce an iteration, and sometimes once you've generated a few concepts, you may get new ideas based upon that, and so the funnel kind of expands out again and then goes down again, and after about 3 or 4 iterations, you finally come down to your final concept. So at each phase of the or iteration of the design cycle, you can be generating new concepts, but each time it's finally narrowing down for what you're finally going to what it's going to be. So just to go into a little more depth about sketching and prototyping. So sketching is really commonly used in design, and it's not really about drawing a product. Sketching is really more about communication and idea generation. So the idea is to try and put some ideas on paper very, very quickly, but help other people understand what you're trying to do. Bill Buxton, who's a very famous user interface researcher, he says that sketching is about the activity, not the result. So the idea is in your mind you have some idea, and if you can create a sketch of it, then you can create a representation of the idea, and that does two things. First of all, it helps communicate what you're thinking to other people, and secondly, once you see your idea down on paper, then it helps you refine the idea as well. You know, sometimes, I guess you probably all had this experience, sometimes it's by expressing an idea that you actually get to think about it more and put it down on paper. So sketching is very useful for really early ideation, to help you think through ideas. It forces you to visualize how things will come together. It's also a great way to communicate with other people, and it forms a key part of what's sometimes called active brainstorming. So people will write lists of ideas down, but then they'll have to maybe explain the ideas a bit more and get your feedback as well. In contrast, we have prototyping, and prototyping is really about creating a physical form of the ideas. So it's about allowing people to experience and interact with the ideas. So you know, when you've got a sketch on paper, it's really hard to push buttons or to hold it in your hand or anything like that. But with a prototype, you can do that. And prototyping is really important because it helps empathy gaining. So it helps people gain a deepened understanding of the design space and what you're building. It helps further with exploration. So again, as you're building things, you think about them more. It's especially important for testing. So in that design cycle, you know, you've got the discovery, design, evaluation. You certainly can't do any evaluation until you have a prototype. And then hopefully it helps, with inspiration, helps other people catch your vision. Sometimes you may have an idea that is so revolutionary that nobody else can really understand what you're talking about until they can see it in their hands. So here's some examples of some prototyping. This is the early Nintendo Wii prototype. So you probably all know Nintendo Wii with the handheld controller. So there's some ideas that Nintendo went through for what the controller might look like. And initially they produced some renderings. So you can see there's some 2D pictures there, some 3D renderings. So even though these look like sketches, they're a lot more polished than sketches. So especially for the 3D renderings here, it took a lot more time. So this is they're not early stage sketches that people would have done when they're in the early ideation phase. It's when they've already got the rough sketches on paper and now they're trying to communicate more clearly about it. So they built a whole bunch of different drawings and 3D renderings and 3D graphic models of what the controllers might look like, and they even made physical prototypes. So here's a whole bunch of physical prototypes of 3D printed different controllers. So sketching will happen early on in the design phase, and then you move over to prototyping. So again, you kind of get this process here where you've got sketching at the beginning, and sketching is really about design, and then over time you'll go to prototyping, which is more about usability and about capturing the user interaction and detailing the actual design. So finally, just to draw one more comparison between the two tasks. The main difference between sketching and prototyping is in the intent. So sketching, you can look, there's a list of words here that relate to sketching. So you're inviting inviting people to understand your idea, you're suggesting alternatives, you're exploring, you're questioning, you're proposing, you're trying to provoke design ideas, and what you're doing is very tentative. Whereas in prototyping, it's more about presentation. So you've got an idea, so now you're asking people to attend to the idea and understand it. Description, refining, providing answers to questions. You know, if you're just designing the Nintendo Wii, when you're sketching, you may have a question: how many buttons are going to be on the Wii? When you build the prototype, you should have an answer. You should say, well, here are the 4 buttons, and here's where they're going to go. Resolving the provocation and providing some specific depiction. So I wanted to give an example of the power of prototyping, and that's through the Google Glass display. So I guess most of you know about Google Glass. We have some in the lab. So here's one of our Google Glass displays here in the lab. Has everybody tried Google Glass before? You have tried? Anybody else? Nobody else? Okay, I'll pass it around and you can try for yourself. I'll first of all talk about this and I'll pass the device around. So Google Glass kind of represents a fourth evolution in computing in some ways. So you've gone from the desktop computer of 20 years ago to, or 30 years ago, to the laptop computer of 20 years ago, and about 10 years ago or so, or less, we've started having smartphones that had quite significant computing power into them. And Glass represents the fourth generation because now the computer's gone from the desktop to the lap to the hand and now on to the head. So it's one of the first truly wearable computers that has been developed. You know, wearable computing isn't new; it's been worked on since the 60s, but this is one of the first devices you can really wear around all day on your head. So here's Sergey Brin, one of the co-founders of Google, wearing Google Glass, and so the hardware itself is we basically have essentially a cell phone class computer squeezed into this band on the head here. You have a battery back here, a touchpad here, a micro projector here, and a camera here. And the micro projector projects sideways, and then it projects images into the eye. So as you can see from the bottom here. So when you're wearing this, this is the view you get. You can see the real world, and you've got this availability to have information always available in the periphery of your eye. So the Glass platform combines computing, communications, and content. But it's very different from using a traditional device. You know, it's different from using a cell phone or from using a desktop or laptop computer. So how long do you think it took them to prototype the first version of this experience? You know, so being able to see a virtual image kind of floating in space in front of you that you could look around and see all the time. Does anybody have any ideas? You have an idea? 1 year? Okay, that's a good guess. Does anybody have any other ideas? Half an hour, okay. So somewhere between half an hour and 1 year. Okay, great. Well, it's actually quicker than 1 year, but a little bit longer than half an hour. So I wanted to show you a video of Tom Chi, and Tom Chi is one of the early designers who worked on the Glass project at Google, and this is a TEDx talk. And in this talk, he talks about the value of rapid prototyping. So you know, if you're going to spend, as you suggested, a year working on this, maybe it would cost you, I don't know, maybe you have 5 or 10 people doing a prototype, so it might cost you $1 million to build a prototype for this. But that's quite a lot of money. So it would be good if you could get the same experience for a few $1,000s and then decide if it's worth going or not before they actually invest the money. And so let me show you the video of Tom Chi talking. It's kind of a longer video, but it's really, really worth it. Oops, not there. Here we go.
My name is Tom Chi. I spent 2 years of my life building the user experience team for the Google X division of Google. And it's a place I affectionately called the Department of Science Fiction because of the futuristic nature of the types of projects we took on. Self-driving cars, Google Glass, and other things that you'll see soon enough. So for those who haven't heard of this project, this is what Google Glass looks like. It allows you to overlay digital things into your eyesight while still maintaining being part of the world. So if I were to pull out my cell phone and look into it, I'm basically out of this world now. Like I'm in my own little cell phone, tablet world, what have you. But Google Glass has the vision of allowing us to continue to be in the world, but also have access to the digital things that we need as well. Now, I'm going to ask you a really simple question about Google Glass. How would you prototype this experience? How long do you think it would take you to make the first working version of a heads-up display? Okay, a little bit on the long side. The answer is one day.
So
And
you're
here's
almost
what it
right, but
looks like. So basically, the magic piece is the coat hanger. The coat hanger, I bent it in a specific shape, and the top loop goes around your neck, and then the bottom loop rests against your chest. It allows me to carry a piece of plexiglass on which a little sheet protector. So these are the things that you put your book reports in so they don't get wet. Literally got at the drugstore. Have it out at the end of the plexiglass, and then it gets projected onto with the Piker projector that's connected to a netbook. And using this setup, within one day, we were already able to start having the experience of what it looks like to have digital things overlaid on your physical world, be able to move around with it, and also use the netbook to try out tons and tons of different ideas around software. Now, after you start getting something like that working, a really important problem comes up. Like, you're wearing this thing on your head. It's like a pair of glasses. So you don't have a mouse or a keyboard or a touch screen, all the ways that you're used to interacting with a machine. So we thought for a second, well, maybe we could do something like what was shown in Minority Report. So for folks who haven't seen that, basically Tom Cruise is manipulating software with his hands in front of his face, and photos are flying over here, and his emails over here, and so on and so forth. So that's the same question again. How long do you think it would take to have the real experience of doing something like that? 2 years, okay. Somebody said one day, 45 minutes. So here's how it looks. So you wear the thing that we saw the first time because you need some way to go project things. But what happens is we got 2 hairbands, which I think was the hardest part. We had to go ask people for their hairbands. But you put one hand in each hairband, and attached to that hairband, we tied a fishing line. And the fishing line goes over the top of the whiteboard and then goes down to this little assembly that's taped to the floor. And what this means is every time I move my hand in any direction, it adds tension to the line, and it does the following with the assembly on the floor. So the other end of the fishing wire is attached to a chopstick. And it's not because I'm Asian, there's just a cafeteria nearby. I don't just carry chopsticks on me. But I tied it to the end of a chopstick. I clipped it into a binder clip and then put it over a pen. And basically what happens then is when you move your arm and it produces tension on the wire, chopstick comes down like a lever and clicks a presentation clicker. One hand moves the presentation forward, the other hand moves the presentation backwards. So this was built in 45 minutes, and that meant shortly afterwards, we were having experiences like looking at an image gallery and saying, next image, previous image. Or looking at our emails and saying, let me click into this email. Let me click reply now. And this was exactly the experience of what it was like to go control software with your hands. And ultimately, what it taught us is we probably shouldn't have this in the product. We learned a lot of things about the social awkwardness of it and some of the ergonomic aspects of it that you couldn't have figured out ahead of just thinking about it. And ergo the second prototyping rule, which is doing is the best kind of thinking. They teach you to think a lot in school, but I think it's a little bit overrated. Now, last example, actually Google's not the first team that's tried to go make something like this. And if you search for heads-up display, you get tons of images of teams that have built various systems like this. But I can tell you at a glance that none of these pieces of hardware are comfortable to wear for more than 15 minutes, except for maybe the helmet over there. But then you got to wear a helmet. So how would you go figure out a way to go wear something like this comfortably? The answer is really basic materials. Modeling wire, paper, clay, and using something like this is able to make something that looked like a pair of glasses really quickly. I cut out pieces of clay that weighed exactly the same amount as the electronic components that we were talking about putting on the device. Wrapped it in paper so you didn't get clay on your face, and then taped it to the modeling wire in various places to go experiment with how a pair of glasses could fit on you. And we discovered something really important then. Like, if you look at this drawing on the bottom, it turns out that the weight of a pair of glasses is actually mostly perceived through how much weight is on your nose. And it also turns out that your ears can carry a lot more weight than your nose, and that's a totally different experiment. We could ask you about that. But because of that fact, if you put weight behind your ears, it allows your ear to go act like the fulcrum of a lever, and it then takes weight off of your nose on the front. And actually, you guys can try this now. Anybody with glasses, if you push very gently on the back of your your glasses, you'll find actually your glasses feel tremendously lighter. Now, this meant that we not only discovered something interesting about how to go, that's useful for developing a device like this, we actually discovered something pretty fundamental that had never been discovered about glasses, period. So if you have really heavy glasses, you can do this and you will be more comfortable. Now, the last point I want to make is about two types of learning, because through the process of rapid prototyping, you're able to learn very, very quickly. It's a very specific type of learning. The type of learning that you usually learn in school, I call book learning. It comes from what humanity already knows, and it's a necessary foundation for you guys to go and explore the world. But there's a totally different type of learning, which I call expansive learning. And this is the learning that you do on behalf of humanity, right? You are creating something new, you are expanding into the possibilities, and you're building that sphere of human knowledge in that process. And we think about these things, and as soon as you hear, like, okay, the infinite realm of possibilities beyond the sphere of human knowledge, you might be thinking, well, there's the scientists at the Large Hadron Collider who have these amazing instruments. Like, that's their job, right? But the truth is that this action is available to all of us. It's not just for the scientists, it's also for the poet, for the songwriter that expresses an emotion for the first time in a unique way. It's also for the person that has an amazing business idea that they're certain can help millions of lives. And it's the realm of using paper, clay, and tape in order to go find a new insight into ancient technology. So now that you guys know about rapid prototyping, I'm excited to see what you'll do with it. Thank you.
So you see that just by in the course of a few minutes, or a couple of days, they were able to test out the idea of having a virtual image floating in front of your face, and also some different interaction methods as well. So what do you think? Sorry. Here's the different prototypes we went through. So you can see here is at the bottom here is the construction he was talking about. Is the coat hanger that holds around the neck. He's got this plastic sheet here. A little pico projector here that's connected, projecting onto the plastic sheet, and then in his other hand he's holding a netbook, and here's another version of the same thing here. And they also looked at mounting stuff on bike helmets. So here's a bike helmet with a projector mounted on it, and then here. And I think he's got a light on the tip of his fingertip, so he might be looking at how you could do gesture input by tracking your fingertip around as well. And then, of course, the glass, Google Glass took a long time to actually go from, a coat hanger and a sheet projector to actually a real device. And here's the real different generations that it's gone through while they were building the device. Some of the earlier versions were basically cell phones. They split apart and put onto your head, and then they finally ended up with what you have here. Let me just give you a quick demo, and I'll let you. And you can pass around and try Google Glass while I'm keep on talking, so you can see the outcome of the prototyping. So let me just. It's a little hard to demonstrate because you can't see what I'm seeing. So let me just run a piece of software that will show you what I'm seeing. Oh, not that one actually. This one here. Okay, so this Google Glass is mounted on glasses frames. Some aren't, but this one. So if you're wearing glasses, you can get your prescription lenses put in here. I put it on. Normally the glass is off most of the time, so it's off right now. And then to interact with it, there are three different ways. You can touch and swipe on the keypad here, the touchpad here. You can push the button at the top here, or you can use your speech input. So when I put it on, if I touch here, you'll see it goes on, and then I can swipe horizontally, and it will show different, in this case, it's subscribed to different news stories from CNN, so here's CNN news stories, and also word of the day, so every day a new word pops up I can learn about. So just swipe horizontally, and you can also go to the right and you see the weather information for Christchurch and so forth. So that's swiping. If you can swipe horizontally, you can tap, you can also swipe down. So you swipe down, it turns off. And if I tap again, it'll turn on again. Now I can use the keywords underneath here to activate the speech input. So I can go, OK, glass, take a picture. and it's going to take a picture. There you go, there's a picture, so that's the speech input working. And then there's also the button on the top you can use as well. So I'll pass it around, you can try for yourself, and you get an idea what was the outcome of the prototyping. The glass display has nose pads that are fitted for my nose, so it might not sit quite right in your head, but you can also rotate this around a little bit, so just push it around here until you can see the whole display. And as I said, when you put it on your head, most likely it'll be off, so if you can't see anything, just tap the side and the display will turn on, and then you can swipe horizontally and see stuff. Oh, and the picture we just took now is on timeline, so the timeline is arranged as a ordered time of when your content comes in, so here's a picture of all you guys right there. And some of these you can tap into and get more things. So, for example, the word effluvium, I want to find out. It'll tell me more about what it's about. So it's a gaseous or gaseous emission that comes from the liquid tube. So I can swipe down, it goes back to 0 there. So I'll pass it around, and you can try for yourself. So what do you think is the, so Tom Chi in the video talked about how it just took an hour to test, or I guess it was 1 day, sorry, to test the idea of having the virtual administration interface, and then, 45 minutes to do the gesture interaction. So what do you think is the benefit of doing fast prototyping like that? Anybody have any ideas? What's the benefit? Yep. Yeah, it's very cheap. Yep. And what else is another benefit of it? You're going to fail a lot too. That's right. So one of the important things of prototyping is you want to fail as much as you can. And you imagine you've got this whole design space in front of you, and in some ways you're like an explorer. You know, in the 300 years ago, when the first Europeans were coming to New Zealand, it was a big adventure to sail from England down to the south of the equator and discover all this unexplored country. You know, New Zealand, Australia, some of the other islands hadn't been discovered by Europeans before. So they were kind of sailing their boats in this big uncharted land. And in a way, that's what you're doing with prototyping. You've got this big design space, and each prototype you build is like a little boat or exploration into the design space. And so you want to try and do as much as you can and send out as many explorations as you can, so you can discover what the good things and the bad things are. So, with Tom Chi, initially they thought it would be a great idea to be able to do gesture interaction with glass like this. But one thing you discover when you do that is it's actually quite tiring to be able to have your hands in space all the time like this. And if they built their assembly with the with the chopsticks and the fishing line, then very quickly after building that, they would discover that it's very tiring to have this working. So that's why they went away from that and moved on to the touchpad. So most of what I'm going to talk about today is, and in the next week or so, is about prototyping tools and how you can do this rapid prototyping like you've seen before. So prototype is an interaction design that can be a number of different things. It could be a series of screen sketches, it could be a storyboard, PowerPoint, video, lump of wood, cardboard mock-up, or a piece of software or hardware with limited functionality. And you saw that last time on Monday when we talked about the Bunratty Park application. You saw how she went from sketching initially to then doing some storyboarding to then PowerPoint, and then using Wikitude, and then finally building a video prototype at the end. So again, the reason why people prototype is they want to do some quick visual design. They want to capture some key interaction elements. They want to focus on the user experience, communicate design ideas, and then just like Tom Chi said, there's a lot of value in learning by doing or by experiencing. When the Google guys did this, they discovered that if they put weight behind the ear, then it makes the glass display feel much lighter. And apparently, in hundreds of years of glasses design, people really hadn't done that before. You don't see glasses that are normal glasses all the way around that have a heavier weight behind the ear to make them appear lighter. And then most importantly, it supports this user evaluation, so you can get feedback from the users. So some of the goals of prototyping is, of course, learning. It's to help solve disagreements or reduce miscommunication. So when you've got the glass prototype on your head, people can catch the vision and they can now understand what you're talking about, and helps them communicate more clearly. It's about starting conversation, and as Aga said, it's about failing quickly and cheaply. So it's testing ideas without spending lots of time and money. You don't want to spend $1 million to build, and work for a year to build the glass prototype, and then discover that actually there's no value to having gesture input. Whereas you can spend 40 minutes or so in the lab working out. And you can also manage the solution building process. What this means is that when you're building a complicated interactive system, there oftentimes are many parts. So with Google Glass, there's obviously display, there's interaction, input methods, there's processing, battery, and all those different components. But you might want to test each part individually. So, for example, they had the idea to do gesture interaction, but so they used the chopsticks and the wire to prototype that. But they were just testing that very specific idea around gesture input, and so they could break the larger problem of user interaction down into gesture and explore that as well. So the benefits of rapid prototyping we just talked about is it's very fast and inexpensive. It helps you also identify problems as well. So once you start building a system, then you start identifying what some of the key problem areas are, like with the Google Glass, input is a key problem area. It gets feedback from users, it helps people be more creative, it gets people and users involved early in the process. As a designer, you want to try and get the people who might be the end users involved as early as you can right at the beginning, because that means you get feedback from the target community about whether or not it's going to work or not. It builds teamwork and communication amongst the design team, helps avoid opinion wars, because now you've got a piece of technology you can test to help resolve any arguments, and it also helps refine the design directions. So when you're prototyping, this is the typical steps you go through. You typically build a prototype of some basic functionality, you test it to uncover different design errors, and then you try and correct the errors, and then you repeat again and again and again. So in that way, it's a major tool for improving usability, and it's really heavily used. The general features of prototypes are that it should enable you to quickly be able to provide examples on a desktop application, for example. The menu structure, dialogue system is very inexpensive, and it shouldn't require any special programming or hardware skills, at least to build the early prototypes. So the main focus, I said before, is prototyping for usability. So you want to be able to design typical task scenarios, and then identify the tasks based on the scenarios, and then try and build prototypes around those tasks. And if the prototypes are functional, then watch users perform the task and iterate again as well. So the idea is to try and do it very, very cheaply. There's lots of horror stories about people who don't prototype correctly at the beginning, and then it costs them a lot of money down at the end. So last time on Monday, I shared the example with you of the Nokia N-Gage phone, and Richie used it, and he was holding it to the side of his head like this, but actually it was kind of supposed to be held sideways, so kind of like elephant ear kind of look. So you could imagine that if Nokia had taken a block of wood and carved it in the shape of the phone, and then asked somebody to use it, and they'd held it to their head like the correct way they were supposed to be using it, and they'd ask the person, "How do you feel right now?" The person would say, "Well, I'm feeling kind of silly." So with $5 of wood or a few minutes of time, they could have fixed or identified that design flaw well in advance of doing a year or two of development and spending millions of dollars actually building a working system. So prototyping ideally should be done very, very early, and user testing with the prototypes done very, very early in the design phase, and that can easily save you mistakes that could cost hundreds and hundreds of times of the original cost. If you've got to move a button around on a physical product, that's a lot more expensive than moving a button around on the sketch of the product. And ideally, usability testing should be done early and should amount for about 5 or 10% of the cost. So one of the key questions is how can we quickly design and prototype interactive experiences? So what I'm going to do is introduce a few tools that you can use, and then you'll be using some of the tools through the rest of the course. So it turns out there's a wide range of tools that people use. On the one side, you've got the low fidelity prototyping, where the idea is to, which is more in the kind of idea generation phase or the expansion phase of the design funnel. And at the other side, you've got the high fidelity prototypes, where it's more about decision making. So this end it's very quick and fast, and this end it's more about usability and testing and functional. So I'll talk a little about sketching and paper prototyping, but not much, because Aga's going to do more of this in her part of the course. And what we're going to talk mostly about is on the right-hand side about the interactive prototypes. So sketching you saw before. So here's a couple of examples of some sketches. This is a user interface sketch showing different menus that might pop up on a desktop. Here's more of a 3D product sketch. What do you think are the attributes of a good sketch for doing designing? What do you think would be some of the attributes of a good sketch? Anybody have any ideas? Sorry, what did you say?
Proper labeling.
Proper labeling, yep. So you need to label what you're talking about, so that's important, yep. So you can see these sketches involve a mixture of drawing and also text writing, so yep. What's another attribute of a sketch that they should have? Yep, so it shows some interaction. I guess the sketches have to be understandable as well. You're looking at this one, and actually, just by looking at the sketch here, it's a little bit hard to know what's going on. So probably the person, when they were doing the sketching or presenting the sketch, they'll be talking as well about it, explaining it. This one's a bit more easier as well. So I think clear communication is a very good attribute as well. So sketching is very basic, and as you saw from the video, that's most likely the first start of the design phase. Then when people have done sketching, oftentimes they'll go to paper prototyping. So in this case, they have sketch interfaces, and then they will oftentimes put on the interfaces post-its or other things that will simulate the use of the interface. And then there's also wireframing, and wireframing is more about the layout of the content on the page. So here's some wireframes from a potential website. So it's showing what content should be there and where it should be placed on the page. People also use storyboarding. And so storyboarding is, in this case, you see a little storyboard that relates to a interactive TV. So you can see it tells a little story about how the family gathers around the TV. They use a keyboard to suggest some flotilla word, and then the system shows some descriptions, they ask for further details, and they can print out something they generated there as well. So it tells a little story. Well, here's another storyboard around some sort of wrist-worn navigation aid. So here's the person trying to find his friend, and on the top there you can see they've got this on the back of their wrist. It has a little map. They do some things here. They've got kind of a camera view showing where their friend is, and then they pop up and they can see their friend there as well. So it tells, it kind of links together sketches or paper prototypes. Then people oftentimes will do physical prototypes, especially if you're building a physical product. So here's some example of physical prototypes. This is some designs for a camera. And then one of the more famous examples was done by the Jeff Hawkins, who was the founder of Palm and made the Palm Pilot. And he decided he wanted to get a feeling for what it was like to have a PDA that he'd be carrying with him all the time. And so what he did is he made this block of wood on the right-hand side and printed out a user interface on the wood, and he had a small stick, a chopstick as a stylus, and he carried this around with him for a couple of weeks. And every time he was in a meeting and somebody said, oh, let's meet next Tuesday, he'd pull out the block of wood and he'd pretend he was putting a meeting appointment in, or if he wanted to find somebody's phone number, he'd pretend he would be using this. So, of course, it wasn't functional, but by using this for a week or two, he got a really deep understanding about how much time it should take to input data, how people would respond to having this type of technology around them, what types of applications that might be used for, and so forth. So it's a really great way of prototyping. And then that led to the first Palm Pilot, which was a really wildly successful, was the first successful PDA in the market. And then you also have this acting or role-playing. And so this is a little bit funny picture, but in this case, they are designing they're designing a sales experience for a Lego store. So this guy is supposed to be representing a Lego salesperson, and he's now role-playing that role and having them act as customers in the store and give some feedback. And we'll talk more about that next week, the idea of experience prototyping as well. So you can move from sketching through to prototyping. So the early design phase is you do lots and lots of sketches, you brainstorm, and then you rough out the interface style. And then you try and build some low to medium fidelity prototyping. So here is you have your storyboarding, you do some interface design, maybe with a wireframe, and then you can use some usability testing. And then finally, you have some high fidelity prototypes that you can then take out and test in the field or in real situations. So you can go from sketching to storyboards to mock-ups to video prototypes, interactive prototypes, to final native applications or final product being produced. As you go down this list, you have increased fidelity and increased interactivity. So let's skip through a couple of tools, and I'll show you some examples, and we'll have a break. So first of all, for low fidelity prototypes, they typically involve sketching and static information display, sketchy storyboarding or user interface templates, and then with high fidelity prototypes, it's more around interactivity. So it's looking at wireframing or mobile prototyping tools or some coding. And there's advantages and disadvantages of each. So the advantages of the low fidelity prototypes is at very low development costs. You can evaluate multiple design concepts very quickly. The disadvantages is that oftentimes it's hard to have real interaction, and so because you don't have the interaction, you don't have the navigation or the flow through the user experience. So it's like viewing snapshots in time of the experience. With the high fidelity prototype, it's fully interactive. It has some of the look and feel of the final product, and it clearly defines the navigation scheme, how the overall user experience. But it can be more expensive to develop, more time consuming, and sometimes once you start locking into a design, then people become reluctant to change it. So you've got an engineer or some people working on a design, and they've spent months working on a product or design, a prototype, and then you look at it and say, well, I don't like it, I want you to move all the buttons around, and they might not be reluctant to do that because of the effort they put into it. So paper prototyping is one of those very low fidelity prototyping. It's a way to use sketching interfaces using existing office material. It's very important in the creative process, and it's, you can also do it. You can use it for usability testing to a limited extent by asking people to imagine their interacting with the display. So here's a quick sketch interface of what you might have. So you can see sketching done here. One of the interesting things about the sketching interface here is that in addition to the interface, people have added annotations to explain what different things are. So sketches you can also annotate as well. With paper prototyping, people will typically sketch out an interface, then they'll add tabs onto the interface to imagine what's going to happen. So in this case, this is a menu for color selection. So you can push the menu, and then what they do then is stick a post-it note saying, okay, when you push the menu, this dialog box is going to appear, and here's going to be a list of colors. And then you can select one and push OK to make it go away. So sometimes people will take post-it notes and stick onto the paper so they can try it out. People also will use card-based prototypes, so you can quickly sketch out prototypes as well. And so here's using kind of a card-based prototype. You've got it's supposed to be a scheduling application, so you sketched it out, and then you can try and select an object, and it puts up a dialog menu as well. And here's some other examples here. One interesting example comes from Apple. When Apple were developing QuickTime VR in the 80s, I don't know how many of you use QuickTime VR, but you've probably all been to websites where you've got a picture on the website, and as you roll your mouse over it, it rolls around and looks like a 3D object. And so that's basically QuickTime VR. When Apple was trying to design that, they had to, they wanted to know how people would want to use mouse input, so that they could rotate the object so it would appear like it's a 3D object. So they used a paper prototype and they used it for user input. So here you can see a picture of a Porsche, and then they told people that they were building some software that when you clicked on the picture and dragged the mouse, it would rotate the Porsche around. So this is where the Porsche started from, and this is the finish position here. Then they asked people to draw with them with a pen on the picture how they would use the mouse to rotate it. And so all of these green lines here are pen strokes that people have made. And so you can see almost everybody has drawn on the picture itself, a couple outside the picture. And in this case, they want to rotate the Porsche 45 degrees to the right. So in most cases, people have drawn right to left with the mouse, with the pen horizontally. You can see another example here where they want to move up and to the right, so now it's more like diagonal. And then they also looked at, well, could we put icons on the side here that would people would click to select around, and they put them. But in some cases, people select the icons, but in a lot of cases, people still draw on the model. And then they did other variation where they said, well, can we put a D-pad controller at the bottom? And again, many people would draw on the model rather than drawing on the D-pad controller as well. So this was a very nice example of how you can use a paper prototype to in usability testing, and then based on this, the final version of QuickTime VR as we experience today is in most cases you click on the picture itself and you drag the mouse, and if sure enough, if you drag the mouse this way, then the model's going to rotate 45 degrees down to the bottom. You can also do paper prototyping with hardware, so just like what the people from Palm did, you can take a physical object and you can put post-it notes or things on the object to prototype what it would look like. So if you're designing a new iPhone application, maybe what you might want to do is take your physical iPhone and put pages of paper on top of the iPhone to see what it looks like to see the screen in your hand as well. And so here's my other examples people have here. So it's very, very easy. The basic materials for lo-fi prototyping is a set of post-it notes, paper, sometimes transparencies, so you can draw on transparent images, overlay them with pens and markers. So I want you all to have a quick experience of that now. So what we'll do is I'll pass, well, I don't have enough pieces of paper, so hopefully I've got some pads here. So if each of you can grab on a pad, and maybe you guys at the back there, you could pull a few pages off the pad here. So pass it around. And here's some pens here as well. And what I'd like you to do is to imagine that you are designing a mobile application for a tourist guide. So some of you, well, Richie, for example, and Cornell, have just arrived in Christchurch. And you know, some of you have been here for a while. So if you've just arrived in Christchurch, you might want to be able to can you give me a piece of paper? Just rip off. Oh, let me actually just give me the whole pad and I'll draw. So when you arrive in Christchurch, you might want to download an app that lets you have a tourist guide. So I want you to imagine this is the screen of your iPhone or Android device, and then I want you to spend about 3 or 4 minutes drawing about 3 screens of what it might be like. So for example, for me, one thing that I would want to have is a map. So here's my map, and but on the map here, I have some other icons I want to put. So here's my map, and this icon here, if I click this, this is going to go to a list view. When I click this, it's going to take me to a list of attractions. And this one here is going to turn on and off points of interest. So when I click on this, it puts up a little point of interest there as well. So I want you to spend about 2 or 3 minutes now. I guess we'll have a break now, so if you need to go to the bathroom or whatever, or stretch your legs, but spend about 2 or 3 minutes now drawing about 3 or 4 screens. So one screen should be the start screen, one screen should be some sort of map screen, one screen should be some sort of information screen about a point of interest. So you've got your map, you select a point of interest. Another screen should be a list of attractions that you could go to. And then imagine how you're going to navigate between them. So this is my map screen. When I click on this one, it's going to go to my list of things as well. So take 2 or 3 minutes, and if you need to go to the bathroom or get a coffee or something, you're more than welcome to. And if you don't have a pen, does anybody not have a pen? I've got more pens up here, so come and grab. It's good to use these fat felt pens because they encourage that it's supposed to be quick, sketchy, not high resolution or anything, and no mistakes. So you can, there's no right answer, so you can just draw whatever you like, and be very, very quick is the whole point. And you just need to go as fast as you can. It doesn't have to be beautiful or anything, just has to be very rough. Because the main thing is to capture the concept on the paper and then the idea of the interaction between the screens. Okay, so how are you guys doing? Looks like you've got a few pages here, Richie. So how many pages have you done? 3. Great. So why don't you pass your pages over here, and let's maybe you can navigate through. Tell us what this. So this is Richie's. This is your map page. Is that right? Okay. So you got a map there, and then what happened? Are these? What are these right here?
That's when you click that, actually a sidebar opens.
Okay. So when you click this one here, sidebar is going to open, and there's the sidebar appearing here. So you've got a list of points of interest or something here. Okay, great. So you can see the map at the same time as this one. And this one here is a search. Okay. So this is a little search thing there as well, is it? Perfect. That's great. Okay. So good. But so you can see by doing this, you can quickly get an idea of some of the key elements you might want to have. You can also get an idea of the functionality. So already by putting that search there, you know that when you put that there, you're going to have on the back end some sort of search engine. If you're a developer, you know if you want to have the thing popping up from the side, then you need to have some way to have some animation or something. However, this is kind of a static prototype or a sketch, obviously. I mean, things here don't actually do anything when you push the paper or anything like that. So it doesn't communicate the transitions between the different things as well. But so that's one of the limitations of sketches. Let me grab your pictures here, and I'll show them as well, Charles. So Charles has kind of map view here, and there's 2 icons on the bottom here. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what do these do? Okay. And so what happens when you hit the pin? Is this the pin one of you?
I like to show that. Yeah, I've put a pin down.
Okay. Okay, so when you put a pin down, it has some mapping route, and when you click the settings, is that? Oh no, that's got the settings. Okay, going away. Okay, great. So let me show you another piece of software that you can use that will make this a bit more interactive. So there's a tool that we've been using at the HIT Lab called Pop. And Pop is a tool that allows you to take sketches like this and make them more interactive, especially for mobile applications. So the idea with Pop is that you sketch on paper, and when you've sketched on paper, then you're creating basically these kind of wireframes. Then you can take photographs of them with your mobile device. You can add hotspots on the photographs, and you can link the pages together. And then you can view them again on your mobile or share them with people as well. So I want to give you a live demo. And then I want to check just everybody, well actually the 4 of you that are enrolled in the class, do you all have either an Android phone or an iPhone? You have, Richie? It was Windows Phone, okay. But you don't have either. Okay, that's great. Well, we'll have to arrange a loaner because I'm going to get you guys to use Pop for your first assignment. So we'll have to make it so you can borrow a tablet or something for that part of the assignment. Okay, so let me plug this in, and then you'll see a live demo of using Pop. So, quickly. So if you have an iPhone or an Android phone, you can download this, and I'll email you URL. You can download this from the website. So let me see, where's the interface here? Okay, so here's Pop. So I'm going to pick on Charles's pages. So here's Pop here, and we're going to start a new project. So I click the button here, and I'm going to call this map. It's the map project. And I guess we're going to use the iPad and landscape mode, which is fine. Okay, so then we create the project. And there's the project created. Now, the first thing we need to do is take some pictures. So if I touch, there's a camera on the top left-hand corner. So you can either take photographs with the camera, or you can upload images from an album. So if you'd gone before and made a bunch of JPEGs or something, but let's take some pictures. So we're going to take a photograph. So I'll take pictures of Charles. So here's a bit of shadow, but that's okay. So let's take a picture here. And then go to next. So you can see the picture's taken, and I can, if I tap on this thing, I can move the picture around, but I can also do this one here, and it lets me crop down a little bit. So that's pretty much the screen there. So that's done. And done. Okay. So now there's the first picture. So now we'll take, I'll give you your pages back. We'll take another picture here. And let's see. Oops. The camera rotated or something. Why is that doing that? Okay. So there's interesting. So he's taking another picture. Oh, and it crashed. That's not good. I'm having problems with my iPad lately with memory, so maybe it's, so let's try that again. Okay, so I go to the next one, and then again I have to rotate this around a little bit and move it, and then crop it, so it's got down. I want to grab the corner there. Okay. It's not a very good picture, but it'll do for now. So it's done. And then we'll take the okay. Take another photograph for the last. Yeah, something's wrong with the camera. It's rotated around, but that's okay. Here we go. So for the last one. And just crop this a little bit. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Oh, it looks like it got. Oh well, it looks like it lost the second picture, but there's enough I can show you for these two anyway. So there's the pictures taken. So now what we need to do is, you can imagine there's going to be, there should be a third picture, but I'm not sure what happened to that. So I'll just show you these ones. So now what you can do is you can add hotspots. So we can go back to the title one here. Add a pin onto the screen. Box here. Puts up a little thing here, drag around. Size it a little bit. It's going to link to this page here. And then if I go to this page here, now we've back again. So maybe what I'll do is I'll add another box here. This icon here. Back to start. But you can imagine if I take Richie's, for example, he had a bit more, the menu copy on the side. Play it, so you hit the play button here. Here's the picture. Click somewhere wrong, like here, highlights the This is a very, very easy way of taking a sketch, turning it into something that you can on a mobile phone or handset. Now I can say to somebody, oh well, if I go here, I'll say to somebody, oh, if you wanted to add a might say, oh, I think I'll click over here. Well, that's not going to add any. Oh well, if I put this push button here, then so you can see this is a way of taking a prototype, paper prototype, and making it something. So that's prototyping. Oh. So I said in the first assignment, sketch out a user interface, and then the good thing about paper prototyping is that it's very quick and dirty. Software. Frustrating trying to express your ideas on rough. When you show your sketches to somebody, they might say, "Oh, well, that's a really bad user interface." Just have to share, and well, you can see things like pop. So, as I said, AGA will be mainly talking about paper prototyping and sketching in part of the course, so I won't go much more depth. But what I want to talk about now is wireframing. So the idea of wireframing is to basically visual elements on about the layout or arrangement items, and so it's not so much about where things are likely to be. So, for example, here's some wireframes that show you where people will often use wireframes to create interaction flows. So here's of it. And movies on your front part. So you can see basically a whole arrows on certain objects on the screen. It's a little bit like the pop software I just showed you, but now put on a piece of paper. There are a number of tools that you can use for wireframing. One of the popular tools is called Balsamic. Balsamic is laying out some kind of sketchy style. So they final things going to look like. and so you can do a short video here that shows. Okay, let's go to the website and then. You can download.
Now I can share my work by saving it on.
That's one of the tools. There's actually many tools that you can use for wireframing. No, this is not a director. So it's just for laying out. So that's a good point. So I want to introduce another tool, which is written by a friend of Argus from Holland. This is a tool that is interactive. So I'll give you a little bit. Run as a standalone app. UXPin is a web-based app. So you connect to your website and your server, but you can wide range of web. For example, here's a class application. Log in, and I'll show you a little bit of a live demo. And for your first assignment, one amongst the assignment is to build a wireframe. So you provide your list of other tools. So I've already got an account with UXPin. So if I just type in, takes me to my so when you log in, you can see the page. Down the side here, you've got a little list of activities I've been doing. So every time I do something, it logs what I've been doing. Create a new project or create a quick wireframe. So let's click on create a quick wireframe. So here's your canvas that you can do. You have down here a library of different elements. So imagine that we're building look at so maybe you want to app. So I can layout. Actually, that looks a little ugly. So So that allows you to arrange some elements. One page, I could actually add a new, I'll call this maybe. So then I can, maybe we imagine a case where you have the list popping outside of an app. When you click on it, you want to actually go. I'll now we can make a list of items. Now with UX Sync, you can also add some interactive activity. Maybe what I want to add is going to so now when I click this one, it's going to take me back to this one. Then I want it to go back to a little like what we do with pop, but okay. So now, very rough dirty design, of course. So we go to the home page here. Then you can actually preview this. Opens it in a web browser and makes it interactive. Now it will show the page. Go to the next page. This allows you to also add comments. So share it with other people. Back to here we go. So then also here for our map. Properties here as well. There's a number of other features as well. So it's very, very quick and easy to create. You can also add your own content by adding images. There's smart elements as well, which you add more complicated behavior. Oh yeah, here's click the smart element, go to the types of patterns. Provide you with a list. They have some behaviors as well. So I won't go through all that, but write out for yourself. And Argus help. We're going to get some free licenses. So, and also we're going to have a guest by the CEO. Quite far off, but he'll tell about the very interesting story. He's Polish as well, started the company, it was very small, but then he was successful after a year. Valley, growing very fast. Anyway, that's it's great software to use. It's important to distinguish between a wireframe and a wireframing. The idea with wireframing is it shows what user interface elements there are and where they should be placed. Prototyping is more about medium to high fidelity. So once you've built the wireframe, you then may need to go into another tool, or actually generate the actual Android user interface or website or whatever else. So I think UXPin generates HTML. Another tool. So some of them will generate HTML, especially for web prototyping. So prototyping is it's quite limited, and of course interacting with a mouse and pushing buttons on a screen is very different from the phone. Final thing is mock-ups. I'm not going to talk about mock-ups very much, but mock-ups are very high fidelity final visual design, Photoshop or some but these ones are mostly static. So you can see the wireframes are low fidelity cost because prototyping. Prototype's done. Mock-ups. Start getting feedback from the stakeholders, so people who project will look at the visual design and say, oh, the buttons are too big, or I want this color, this different color. So you can see that wireframing is really good for defining content. But it's quite bad for showing interactivity. Last thing, quite slow to build. What some people do is they use HTML for prototyping. Department, so the text department. They wanted to be able to look at what functionality they want to have on the website. So there's basically but because HTML, you can go to another page right out. But this is then the final visual design. Colors here, and then of course it generates the So the good thing about HTML wireframes is that you show interactivity. Browser. However, there's something JavaScript code to build it, and you can only design what you can build. So what you really want to do is like with the pop, when people click the button, you want to see what happens next. some way people will do that is by using screen flows. So basically, example of that is the Bollywood application I showed you before. Flash to do so screen flows are really good for communication and one of the most important elements of that is sketching. You provide a bunch of different screens, the sketched map screens. Abstraction is really how you get from when you look at your map sketched out and you look at the list of objects. The question is, how are you going to get from the map to the list? Bill Buxton said, that unless you can show me so as a designer, it's really about being able to show those transitions between some companies make design patterns. There's a list of different patterns that you can transitioning between states. So you might decide, okay, well, I want to do some navigation, browse through here, and then it has a bunch of way that you can browse through solutions other designers have made. Some code examples, code from. That's quite common in prototyping to use design patterns that other people develop. There are other tools that let you build more interactive prototypes. So one of them is allows you to HTML or to a mobile app. We have in the lab here a site license for Azure. So if So basically, it allows you to crosses over between going from what UXPin does to, and it will generate um, I can stuff here. So it makes shows. Another one that we've been using before is called Loco. Loco is a drag and drop wireframe collaboration. There's also one called Proto.io. Proto.io is similar to UXPin. Phone, and you can unlike UXPin. So for example, if you're building some sort of novel mobile game that requires you to shake the phone in different ways, or maybe an application that requires live video input. Live camera. Sometimes they're not cross-platform. So the last thing I want to talk about today is video sketching. So video sketching is a way that you can convey more of user experience without some limitations. And demonstrate the experience of the product, and to also help you discover where you've got some gaps in the concept. Flash, iMovie, or some idea example of a video sketch. So this is a example application for mind mapping. Oftentimes you'll concept mapping, you draw a bubble. So you normally do that on pen and paper, but with pen and paper it's quite hard to modify. Why don't we build mind map software for iPads that create bubbles dynamically and link you. So they made a video sketch so you can so here's circle his finger, the map appears, and the keyboard pops up, so he types in with a line. Types into that one as well. It's supposed to be all the things that are on a man's brain. So it's like types of beer. So, very quick and rough, but you can see what they've basically done is used a series of stop motion animation. From that, you can get a quick idea of what some of the functionality might be required. So if you really want to make this real, you have some way to recognize the bubble, a way to draw lines, and a way to delete and copy things. So to make a video sketch, you stop motion like you just saw, or another example of a video sketch. I know the application for phone's Vine, make a short 6-second video. Somebody said, okay, well, we want to make a version of Vine that works onto the obviously the display there is quite different from like using Vine on the So it's running now. So actually I made a Vine video of the start a Vine record. Right in the top right hand corner what the first Google Glass also, when they first released Google Glass, they made a concept video of what Glass was like. So they made a one day where it was like, it might be like using Google Glass. he's playing ukulele. That was the first glass concept video that came out. And obviously the user interface has changed dramatically. So they had this kind of bubbles concept. They totally got rid of that, and they've got now the cards concept and swiping through. But you can see some of the interactions are the same. So they've got the camera interaction. They've got different sharing things like that as well. So it's quite common in wide sell the concept to people. So when people the idea of Google Glass, they have all patients, their friends, searching, and all these different things. So here's the kind of a comparison of different tools. Capture the actual interactions people in the real world. So I want to stop there, but I want to give you information about the assignment. I'll email you all. So this is assignment. So the goal of this assignment is to design a mobile application for writing. So kind of what you started sketching here, but more detail. But the applications have a number of components. It should have a map. Guide you to the. We also support an augmented reality. I showed you on Monday the IO software with tags in the real world, showing you where the functions are. So panorama view. IO or maybe Azure on our tools. Finally, a video prototype. A lot of work to do, so make sure you start it as you go. I want to show you an example of what one of the students did. And again, I'll email you all this so you. So this is what one of the students did. So last year we had an assignment around building a digital photo board. So we've got a photo board out there. One of the students developed, this is a video prototype. They basically made a set of still images, PowerPoint to prototype like that. So about a 30-second video, and you can use writing tools like Flash, iMovie. So, does anybody have any questions about what I've talked about? I said I'll email another assignment from IGA tomorrow. So now and papers. Prototyping for tiny fingers. And it's about how to build prototypes. In this case, I looked at devices, tiny fingers. Pass that around. I think there's copies for everybody who's enrolled, plus a couple more that you guys can share. This paper is a paper called Experience Prototyping. This is what we'll talk about next week on Monday. So what I've shown you so far, a lot of it is prototyping the application on a mobile or on a web page, but kind of in isolation. Of course, when you're using technology, oftentimes the technology is used much broader experience. So, for example, going to check in to flight, on the plane, you may have an app on your mobile phone that provides outgoing boarding passes for checking in. But using that app is just one part of the checking process as well. So there's been concept being developed by IDEO over the last 10 years or so called experience prototyping. We are trying to prototype the whole experience of somebody using technology. So that's what this paper talks about here, and we'll talk about more about that Monday next week. So we'll pass it around. Great. And there's one other piece of housekeeping. So I think Ken Beckman, who some of you met, some haven't met, he's the manager and deals with all the finances and everything. He's going to try and arrange a meeting with, or I guess the 5 of you, or in the next day or two, to talk about a little bit more about logistics in the lab. So we've got spaces we're arranging for you all to work in, and also some of you, we have to finalise scholarship payments, things like that as well. So he'll talk to you about that as well. And also, we need to start talking about projects. So I'll schedule a meeting where we start talking about the projects and get you guys set up for initial projects as well. Does anybody have any other questions? Great. Okay. So Aga's going to be teaching tomorrow. Oh, that's the last thing. We need to change the time tomorrow because Saksi couldn't make it. Well, I guess he couldn't make it today either. So I'll email him and see. But is 3 o'clock tomorrow? Did you talk to your boss about changing your schedule yet? Okay, right. So it seems like we have a toss-up of...
I wasn't sure what one you guys were.
Oh, sure. You're working in the morning, right? And then you've got tomorrow... What time do you normally finish work on Thursday? Is it till 5, is it, or 6 or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's
So, is it possible for you to go in the morning tomorrow without telling me you're coming, or
Is that?
are you able to work tomorrow morning without?
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you do that, and why don't we set the time tomorrow for 3 o'clock, and I'll email Sakthi and let him know. Then hopefully he'll turn up. I'll also email him to make sure he's still enrolled in the class because he may have decided he couldn't take the class as well. And then we'll have. Is that okay for you, Aga? So tomorrow we'll have the class not at 10, but we'll move till 3. And I think that'll probably be the true for Tuesdays and Thursdays. But I'll contact Sakthi and see. And then, yeah. Then that's fine for you? Okay, great. And if you can't make it because it's such short notice, then we'll video the class. That's totally fine. Yeah, we'll video the class and you can watch the video as well. It's just that Sakthi hasn't been to either of Aga's class, so it'll be good if you can get one of them. And then, yeah, and then we'll set it up next week. Great. Okay. Well, thanks. Time for lunch, and I guess you need to stop the video recording. Yeah. Yeah.
Today about scholarship.
Sure. Do you think I should just